Okay. All right. Let's take a deep breath. All right. Oh, guess I gotta talk into that. Um, Trying to see if my levels are coming in. Check, check, check. Okay. There we go. Let me check my level. So we're gonna do this abstract lecture in two places. And it's going to be put on my podcast, which I have two. So I have one podcast that is dedicated to indigenous and ancient mental health practices, causes and effects, remedies. That platform is called Normal LOL. Now you can find it on Apple, Spotify, Blueberry, et cetera, et cetera. My other platform is called Multi-Monogamous. That platform is on Apple, iHeartRadio, and a couple others. Oop, that was close. um, so the audio form of this lecture, abstract lecture, will be on that podcast and, of course, recorded on this YouTube channel. Let me just check audio right quick. Audio looks good. Audio looks good. Check, 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 check one. So let me go ahead and do the intro right quick and then we'll just get into it. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome back to. I'm about to say normal LOL. Welcome back to Multi-Monogamous, the Poly Galaxy. Ghost. That's your host. That's me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. No matter where you are, this is where you need to be for real, for real. We got a dynamic, abstract lecture. The reason why I call it abstract is because I like being all over the place. I like the spirit moving me to go here and to go there. Now, don't get me wrong. I got stuff lined up. I came prepared, right? But I like to just go in different places, and then it all comes together how I love it to come together organically. And with that being said, this is about the origins of polyamory and polygamy. Emphasis on polygamy because when it comes to polyamory, it's not a lot of documentation, and I'll go deeper into why that is, or at least my theory as to why that is, anyways. So this is more centered on polygamy, which is an offshoot of polyamory, as opposed to people probably think that polyamory is an offshoot or a subset of polygamy. It's the other way around. I'll tell you why. Um, Crazy is that I was going to do an episode on the origins of marriage, but I decided not to choose violence this particular episode. And when I say violence, I'm being sarcastic, of course, but it could be a touchy subject because for obvious reasons, the institution of matrimony is highly revered for respectable reasons. And yeah, I didn't want to do the origins on that yet, but it just so happens that when you talk about polygamy, you have to talk about marriage to a degree. So I am going to include some historical pieces of information regarding marriage, but we're not going to get into theories and opinions and information and stuff like that because, like I said, I'll save that for another episode. All right. My disclaimer, as I do with all of my episodes on all of my podcasts, do your own research. Always be willing to do your own research. Do not take anything I say for granted as if it is a fact. When we're doing stuff like lectures, there's so much information on there. You got to take a number of variables into consideration. My most important variable that I lead with is everything. Everything is a truth and a half truth or a half truth. So you got to keep that in mind. Another thing you got to keep in consideration is the fact that a lot of stuff is missing. Like we just have pieces of a full puzzle, and we will probably never have the entire puzzle all put together. And when it is all put together, it might not even be in our lifetime. It could be in our children's lifetime, whatever. But we have documentation of a lot of stuff, but keep in mind that was written by a human being, an erred human being, at that, possibly. You got to keep in mind that when it comes to ancient systems and formatics and contracts of information, et cetera, a lot of it was based off of oral tradition. And that is especially important when it comes to Africa and possibly Asia. A lot of oral, a lot of stuff is oral tradition, so it was never written down. And then, like I said, the stuff that just was written and just hasn't been found yet. And then there's stuff that got burned in very, very renowned libraries. So there's just a lot of stuff that's probably missing. So when we have lectures, and I think, to be honest, that goes for any lecture you're watching, like, just always be willing to look at it from a perspective that we just have fragments of the puzzle, you know. So always be humble when it comes to that. We're going to start with Egypt and, or as I like to put it, Kemet and Kush and Nubia, like they call it, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Mesopotamia, Babylon, Samaria. Why? Because when it comes to ancient documentation, as far back as we can go, that's where it is. It's in Africa, and yeah, when you say the Middle East, we're talking about Africa. You know, Egyptology has done quite a heck of a job trying to separate Egypt and Ethiopia from Africa. It's in Africa, so it all goes back to Africa, and I know I have a lot, a lot of friends and people that I follow that follow me that subscribe, respectfully so and rightfully so, to the indigenous aspect of being from the Americas. No problem with that. Nevertheless, when it comes to documentation, I'm not saying that it's not in the Americas. I'm just saying that ancient documentation that dates that far back as it pertains to polygamy and marriage, and polyamory, and even other stuff that I study like mental health, you just don't see it that far back. So like I said, it might not have been discovered yet, or it just wasn't well documented for whatever reason. That doesn't mean there's not ancient information from the Americas. It just doesn't go that far back. So yeah, disclaimer is that you got to always do your own homework and collect your own sources also. Don't go around spouting, this and that is that, from the perspective that these are all facts. That a lot of this stuff is, like I said, a truth or a half truth, and a lot of it is theory also. So, with that being said, let's get started. We're gonna start with marriage first because polygamy, using that as another starter piece. Well, that's the multiplicity of marriage. So polygamy is coming from the origins of marriage. So let me take a drink of water and then I'll be ready. Excuse me, another sidebar. And anybody who's listening to this on the podcast, just bear with me because I'm doing video too. So I may take pauses and breaks for a second. So don't leave. I'm still here. And my dog is about to start. Stop. Don't you start. So, what was I about to say? Oh, yeah, it'll be on video now, but there's a possibility that I may put it on Patreon at some point. So enjoy it right now, and because you might have to pay for it later on. And of course, my dog is about to start acting crazy. Hold on a second. I'm about to put him up. Okay. Um, yeah. Hold on a second. Just hold on, because I don't want no interruptions from these fools. Hold on. As soon as I get started. Oh, okay. So, we ready? We ready? We ready? We ready? Okay. All right. So, when we're talking about marriage, we're talking about some really far back origins, and I can't share on video. I don't know how to yet. Like I said, this is my first time. Not my first time, but it's been a long time since I've done video. So, excuse me. I'll hopefully pick up that technique at a later point in time. So, but yeah, Origins of marriage. So we're talking about 2350. Yeah, 2350 BCE. From what I've gathered, the latest text that's coming out of the pyramid text, and just for those who are really geeky and like to just just really love to know like where this stuff is coming from, like that's coming out of Giza basically, or like they like probably called back in that particular point in time Sakara. That's Saqqara, the pyramids of Sakara. um Pyramid text 2350. So keep that in mind. Another thing to take into consideration is that particular text, that's about 700 years after the first dynasty. We're seeing documentation regarding the first dynasty, and it could be speculative or whatever, but we're seeing that documentation that's coming at about 3100 BCE. And hold on a second, my dog is barking again. Hold on. Come here, Kaluna. Come here. Sit. Ah, it was sleeping. It was sleeping before I started. Anyways, 2350. Um, you're not really seeing Mesopotamia talk about marriage at that particular point in time. They could have been, but it doesn't show up documented in any text prior to the Hammurabi Code of Laws. The Hammurabi Code of Laws is first dynasty of Babylon, and that's around again it's speculative between 2100 and 1750 BCE. Still kind of close in proximity to the pyramid text as Kemet, Kush, Nubia, Sumeria, Babylon, Mesopotamia. You could tell that there was a sharing of information. When I say sharing, it's still years and years apart, but they're cousins, they're family members. So information was sprinkled in both places at different particular points in time. Arguably, a lot of stuff started in Sumeria before Kemet. It's been debated that Kemet and Kush, they get the knowledge from Sumeria and Babylon. It's been debated that they get it from southern parts of Africa. Who knows? Again, you gotta just be willing to do your own research on that. So um, let's kind of just dive in a little deeper regarding the pyramid text. That's 2350, first intermediate period. And also, when we talk about the origins of marriage, you have to include the Nippur tablets. Nippur is in Babylon, Old Babylon. That's 1900 and through 1600 BCE. You're going to find some of the first marriage contracts, laws established in the Nippur tablets. Those are clay tablets. So that's just the starting point, regarding the origins of laws, codes, and contracts as it pertains to marriage. So let's get a little bit into the aspect of polygamy. I want to start with, hold on one second. Let me bring up and just to kind of give you the sources. Let me run through the sources real quick. We have World History Encyclopedia. We also have academia.edu. We also have Osiris and the Egyptian Resurrection, illustrated drawings and Egyptian papyri and monuments. We have Egyptian Old Kingdom dynasties. Can go search through that also. Chicago.edu. Where are we going to, what page is this? This is page one. Page one. And this is the structures of power. There was something I wanted to read right there, but I can't remember. But we'll just kind of go back down. Like I said, this is an abstract lecture, so just hang in there. We're gonna have fun. Um, Another thing we're reading is out of archive.org, and that's gonna be some. That's I'm really looking forward to reading that part to you regarding the dynastic period and polygamy. I don't want to move there because I have stuff highlighted right there. Um, we also have a brief history of non-monogamy that's coming out of the modern getmaude.com, getmod.com. We have ifstudies.org and jstor.org, very highly respectable scholarly sites when it comes to research. Um, and what else we have? San Francisco SU University.edu. And on top of that, I'm including, believe it or not, I am including um, Chat GPT. Yeah, I've decided to sprinkle a little bit of Chat GPT into this. So let's go from left to right. Let's go to sfsu.edu, Hammurabi. So this in particular is talking about laws relating to families and stuff like that. It reads the law relating to the family treats the father as its head. Marriage is preceded by the betrothal, by a betrothal gift from the bridegroom to the bride. The so called acquisition price, something of which there is no evidence in Sumerian law. I thought that was interesting. The so called acquisition price, no evidence of that in Sumerian law. A further innovation, or at least something that cannot be traced back to Sumerian times, is the written contract. If a patrician has taken a wife but has not made a contract with her, that woman is not his wife. Polygamy is permitted, whereas Sumerian marriage was monogamic. Divorce is granted for an adequate reason. For example, if a patrician has been taken prisoner and there is not sufficient in his house to live on, his wife may enter the house of another. That woman shall incur no blame at all. Hammurabi Laws, Code of Laws. If you want to look up some more of that information regarding polygamy, in particular, you can go to Code of Hammurabi. Again, that's 2100 1750 BCE, First Dynasty of Babylon. And that's going to be laws 144 through 147. And again, that's talking about polygamy. Um, let's move on. Let's move on a little further. I thought this was cool. Now, I read some of this, but I kind of just want to just read this off the dome with you, and we can just kind of go through it a little bit together. When monogamy became the norm. Oh, and a sidebar. A sidebar. This is a sidebar. I think sometimes there's someone might raise a question. Well, if you're talking about ancient times, how come we're not including Greece and Rome? Let me tell you why I don't include Greece and Rome. Because when it comes to me and my people, that ain't our territory. Okay. Now I know that it's been said that we have been everywhere, all over the place, and we're the first regarding everything. I'm not here to debate that. That's not what this particular episode is about. I'm just saying when it comes to that aspect, that part, those regions, that our stuff is not definitely not well documented over there. Not to mention when it comes to Rome and Greece, although there is documentation of a certain amount of reverence that Greece in particular had for Africans, and maybe some degree some Romans. You don't see it a lot in Rome, but to some degree Rome. Um, I'm just being honest. A lot of things that they did regarding the material in Africa as it pertains to Kemet and Kush, Nubia, stuff is inverted. It's inverted. It's perverse. It's a whole new civilization. So just like we can use this. You being at a job, for example, when a new company takes over, what's the first thing they want to do? They want to put their print, their tattoo, their signature on how the company's going to operate now. So they're going to change around rules. They're going to fire some people. They're going to bring in new people. Microcosm of the macrocosm. It's the same thing when it comes to civilizations. And I'm not here again to debate what's right or wrong regarding that. I think you can make up in your mind what's not right and what's not wrong. But a lot of stuff that they did to our information, again, like I said, it was perverted and inverted and rewritten, taken out of context. Some stuff kept, some stuff not kept. So I don't use ancient Greece, ancient Rome stuff. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying that when I want to check out ancient stuff as it pertains to my culture, which is a derivative of the ancient Americas and ancient Africa, that's where I'm looking, and arguably Afro-Asiatic Asia also. So just wanted to make that clear. Now let's get back to what I was about to read, and this is coming out of the Modern. When monogamy became the norm, there are different theories about when and why monogamy in humans arose, but all agree on one point. We didn't start out this way. Some scientists believe that single partnership became an evolutionary advantage because it decreased the spread of STIs, while some anthropologists excuse me, believed that monogamy arose around the same time that farming did, both to grow wealth and to protect offspring. Either way, this practice caught on, as did the practice of other traditions like dowries and arranged marriages. What if I want to expound on that a little bit? I don't. I'll say this. I'll just, and it's not. I don't know if it's really adding much to that as far as monogamy becoming the norm. What I will say is going back to the origins of what we have documented, which is 2350 BCE. We don't have nothing later than that. Okay. So the question is, what was going on before then? Right? What was going on before then? What do you think was going on before then? If they weren't writing contracts, and let's just assume that there's contracts that haven't been found that maybe will be found that document um, polygamy and marriage being around 5000 BCE. Regardless, what was going on before written contracts? These written contracts were not always around. And the concept of marriage, although it may have existed in other different forms, um, people all around were not doing it that way. And as I read other stuff, you'll see that um, especially in ancient Egypt in particular, when it came to quote unquote the common folk, they were just like, man, let's just shack up, as our grandparents would say, we gonna shack up and we gonna do this thing. And again, that's not me. I don't want to get too deep into the origins of marriage and the importance or lack of importance or whatever the case may be. We're just talking about non-monogamy and how it started and where it possibly came from. Non-monogamy, part of that umbrella is polyamory. Before there was polygamy, before there was written contracts, there was polyamory. So that's where you get the flip side. I think a lot of people think that polyamory is a subset or offshoot of polygamy. No, it's the other way around. Polygamy is a subset and offshoot of polyamory. Because before there was written contracts, if there was multiplicity regarding multiple wives or multiple husbands, if there's no contract involved, that is polyamory. All right. So polyamory probably goes back to dirt, whenever dirt was invented. Um, we'll continue. So, polygamy in the ancient world, marriage was already an established practice, mainly with the goal of procreation. By the time civilization was founded in ancient Mesopotamia, but even Hammurabi's code, a strict set of laws in the society allowed for polygamy. Again, that's 144 through 147. Hammurabi Code of Laws. This ruling, however, had the same goal of marriage as an institution. If a man's wife could not procreate, he could take a second wife who could. If I'm correct, I think that's in the Bible too. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, and like I said, that's 2100. Hammurabi's Code of Laws, speculated 2100 to 1750 BCE. Yeah, this interesting, strict, rigid, and let me tell you something about these strict, rigid code of laws. I don't know where they came from. There's another code of laws. I think there's two before Hammurabi. They do. It seems like they don't concern marriage. You have the code of Urukagini. That's 24th century BCE, and then there's another one coming after that. Then there's one more, and then you have Code of Hammurabi. So Hammurabi's definitely following suit at that point. Why he decided to add marriage, I don't know. And polygamy, I don't know. But it's just interesting that with the inception of high civilization comes these code and laws and the inception of written contracts regarding this stuff. I have theories, but we're not gonna get into that. We're just gonna talk about the origins of polyamory and polygamy. All right, all right. Don't press me. Don't press me on that. Um. So, and then I was gonna say, in addition to that, if you look at our legal system, you will also see a lot of similarities with our legal system and our code of laws. Our Western modern code of laws line up with a number of different things in the Hammurabi code of laws. So, you know, microcosm of the macrocosm. Polygamy and concubines. Concubines were typically women recognized as sexual partners to a man, though not as spouses. This practice existed all over the ancient world, particularly in upper classes. In ancient Greece, Rome, China, Mongolia, and Japan, powerful men were likely to have concubines who were expected to bear them offspring. Yeah, let's go a little further. Um, I don't think there's any more to read. I'm gonna read polyamory today, and then we'll continue. Polygamy is illegal in the United States and many other countries today, but polyamory is perfectly acceptable, and it's even become far more mainstream in recent decades. You wouldn't be hard pressed to find a person in an open relationship by simply swiping through a dating app today. Maybe you or your close friends are even in the 4 to 5% of Americans who practice consensual or ethical non monogamy. While that number may not be exceptionally large, it's one that could be growing, especially when you consider a 2016 study that found a little over 20% of Americans had tried ethical non monogamy. Yeah, and we'll move on from there. So, again, you have polyamory, which is that's the overarching practice of companionships along with monogamy. I want to make sure I'm not discrediting monogamy. I know they're saying that uh, uh, monogamic companionships is not as old as polyamory or polyamorous relationships. Honestly, I don't know. I just kind of, in my mind, I just say they both go back as far as I don't know what. I'm very, very strong-minded and strong-willed on the perspective that they both should be allowed to exist side by side, and there should be benefits for both, parties side by side. It's just that from a and conditional, traditional and conditional perspective, we've been indoctrinated to believe that monogamy is the only thing that should be, and it's the only thing that should have benefits attached to it, and that you're wrong, and that it's a sin, and that you're probably mentally ill, if you practice anything other than monogamy. And that's what's not fair. No disrespect to monogamy. I firmly believe that as different creatures and entities and species within the umbrella of humanity, that we are all just different, and we all practice should be able to practice different things. Just like in the bird kingdom, you have the word bird, and then you have 10,000 species of birds that practice different types of mating habits. Okay, so that's kind of how I see polyamory and monogamy. Let's move on a little bit. Let's move on a little bit. So I'm just gonna read a few things. Like I said, I highlighted this. I really want to see. Hold on, let me do something right quick. Copy, copy, copy. I want to see. I want to give you the source of what I'm reading right quick. See if it pulls up. Oh yeah, this one took a while to pull up. Yeah, we'll get to it. We'll get to it in a second. I'll just start reading. Um, so we're gonna start. Polygamy was very common. No, let's keep going. Let's go up. Let's go up. Okay, marriage. Let me see if I can find the source one more time. Hold on. Let me see if I can find the source for you. Yeah, it's gonna take forever. So marriage. Marriage made the marriage legal, and it is unlikely that there was any religious ceremony. And this is regarding the new empire, regarding Kemet, Egypt. Under the new empire, women of high degree took care to have suitable provision made for them before they married, and carefully worded legal contracts safeguarding their interests were drawn up and executed. Apparently, any man might marry any woman, for there seems to have been neither family nor tribal totem, at least in the dynastic period. Polygamy was very common. Among the upper class, a man frequently married more than one wife for purely official and social reasons, which were often connected with property of various kinds. And the inscriptions mention a few cases in which two wives rule in a man's house at the same time. Kings, of course, married several wives for political and state reasons, and they and their nobles usually kept large harems. Among the lower classes, and this is important, I want you to catch some of this right here, okay? I want you to catch this. Among the lower classes in the great towns, sexual morality was not of a high order, and men frequently lived with women who were not their wives. Then, as now, they entered into temporary marriages. Excuse me. I'm gonna read that one more time. I'm gonna get some water. Hold on a second. I think I got the source, by the way. Hold on one second. Oh, the source. I did say what I think I did name that source up front. Osiris and the Egyptian Resurrection by E.A. Wallace Budge. Very, very renowned author when it comes to Egyptology, Egypt information. If I'm correct, he wrote a translated rather a very popular book regarding the Book of Dead, or the Book of Coming Forth by Light, which is a highly renowned book that I suggest you read. So going back to that, reading that again, then as now they entered into temporary marriages, and as often as not they called the women who lived with them their sisters. Now I want to I want to stop right there. That made me chuckle because you're probably not gonna find this funny, but I found it funny, and that's all that matters. But it just, the fact that they would call them their sisters just kind of made me think about like when a guy gets caught cheating and he's like, "Oh man, that's just my cousin, man." I just busted out laughing when I first read that part. Um, yeah, I know somebody damaged listening right now. Like, I don't find that funny. It ain't funny. All right. Anyways, in all classes, men sometimes married their actual sisters in all classes, and they appear to have done so in order to keep property in the family. This kind of incest was authorized by the cult of Osiris. For according to the legend, the two brothers, Osiris and Set, married their sisters, Isis and Nephthys. Another legend quoted by Plutarch makes Osiris to have union also with Nephthys. I wonder where nepotism comes from. Nephthys. I don't know. The result of this intercourse being Anubis. The Ptolemies adopted the custom of sister marriage, though the Greeks in general abhorred it or hated it. Among modern African peoples, marriage between brother and sister is practically unknown. In West Africa, marriage within any degree of con- consanguinity is forbidden, and marriage of cousins is impossible. In modern Egypt, the marriage of cousins is regarded as a fitting arrangement, and all parties are satisfied. So that's a lot to swallow right there. Let's kind of break that up a little bit. Now, even though I'm reading out of one application, there are a lot of applications, especially when you start talking about certain things that come out of like El Medina, El Dare Medina. Um, Let me make sure I said that right. El Dare Medina, Dare El Medina. Yeah, Dare El Medina, which is that particular village and region in particular is where you'll find the same information regarding the practice of ancient Egyptians as it pertains to lower class. Excuse me. They just didn't care about marriage and all that stuff. Like I said, the these codes and laws or something stuff like that, even when they came into effect, it was for just one region in particular. It wasn't global. It wasn't a global statute. It was a regional statute. It was a civilized civilization statute. So that doesn't mean everybody subscribed to it, you know? Um, going back to that, as far as the lower classes are concerned, that's where you see these things being temporary. The cousin sister aspect of things as it pertains to marriage, I think you gotta take that with a grain of salt. I know somebody probably heard them was like, "Ew, that's disgusting." You gotta keep in mind when it comes to bloodlines, the things that the ancients were doing. I'm just gonna be just real with you. You probably need not try to wrap your mind around a lot of stuff that they were doing because you're looking at their reality through your modern lens of reality, and the things that they were doing and the things that they were building and the type of minds that they had, especially when you're talking about the upper elite class of people, it's it doesn't make sense. Like you don't have the mind space to even wrap your mind around like what exactly was taking place. And keeping in mind when it comes to the ancients, a lot of stuff is mythical, mythology, symbolism, you know? And just because that there was the marrying of brothers and sisters, that doesn't necessarily mean that there was procreation or there was the practice of physicality as it pertains to intimacy and sex. It could have been going on, and it might not been a big deal based upon that particular point in time. From again, things were different at that particular point in time. I don't want to get too deep into that because y'all might think I'm crazy. I got a lot of different perspectives on, um, the way that they practice a lot of things as it pertains to nature by nature via consciousness. So, you know, again, when it comes to bloodlines and stuff like that, they was all about keeping it in the bloodline. So that's what they were gonna do, and it just may very well be true that the Greeks saw what they were doing as not right, but they might have thought that they were being physical about it, and they were like, I ain't doing that. Nevertheless, the Romans took the baton from the Greeks, and the Romans sure didn't have no problem with incest, among other things. And we will move on. Again, not trying to make this about the origins of marriage, but you got to look at the origins of marriage to look at the origins of polygamy too. So we'll go past that again. That's coming out of Osiris and the Egyptian Resurrection by E.A. Wallace Budge, keeper of the Egyptian and Assyrian antiquities. That's dope, man. I like that. Let's let's get a little more into some other aspects of polygamy. And now I'm going to go to Chat GPT because, like I said, I like to gather stuff from a lot of different places. I have books also that I like to read up on regarding this stuff. I do not have the books with me at this particular moment, but let me find out where. So this was a question that I had asked ChatGPT, and I'll read to you the response. What year was polygamy documented in the instruction of Ani and the Book of the Heavenly Cow? And just to give you a reminder of what that's all about, Book of the Heavenly Cow, 1550 to 1070 is speculated to have been created. The Book of the Divine Cow is also called. Maxims of Ani, or the Maxims of how you say Ani's name? I'm gonna see if I can say it for you right quick. Maxims of Amenepi. Hold on a second. Um, I'll come across it in a second, and then I'll try to say it to you. But very popular maxims, again, also known as instructions. But we'll keep on going until I get to that part. But yeah, Maxims of Ani, much later than the Book of the Heavenly Cow. Looking at us again, speculated between 2860 and 1500 BCE. Book of the Heavenly Cow. That's pretty much written in Medu Neter, also known as hieroglyphics on the walls of Seti the First, Tutankhamun, Tutankhamun, Ramses II, Ramses III, and we will go from there. But that's where you find different aspects of polygamy. So I will read to you what it said. The instruction of Ani and the Book of the Heavenly Cow are both ancient Egyptian texts, but their exact dates of composition are not known with certainty. I think my dog is about to start barking again. Hold on a second. Okay, we'll continue. The instruction of Ani, also known as the Maxims of Ani or the instruction of Amenemhat. Just look, I'm trying here. Sometimes these words are hard to say. Amen. Amen Imhat. Amen Im Amen Imhat. Amenemhat. Instruction of Amenemhat is a collection of moral and ethical teachings that is believed to have been written during the Middle Kingdom period of ancient Egypt, which lasted from around 2055 BCE to 1650 BCE. However, some scholars believe that the text may have been written even earlier, 2686. The Book of the Heavenly Cow, also known as the Book of the Cow of Heaven or the Book of the Divine Cow, is an ancient Egyptian mythological text. Tells the story of the sun god Ra and his battle against a rebellion of humans. Interesting. I've learned quite a bit about Amun Ra over the past few months, and some things I didn't know, but apparently he didn't like humans. So that's interesting, especially considering a lot of y'all say amen at the end of certain things, but we'll move on. We'll move on. Both of these texts are significant sources of information about ancient Egyptian society and culture, and they provide insights into the beliefs and practices of the time, including the practice of polygamy. Yeah. So you have polygamy showing up in that. Let's go to Chat GPT for some more. Now, we've already read about the Code of Hammurabi, but I'm going to read to you what I had asked regarding the Code of Hammurabi. The Code of Hammurabi, where is it specifically, right? A set of laws from ancient Babylon dating back around 1754 BCE does contain provisions related to marriage and the family life, including regulations around polygamy. Specifically, laws 144 through 147 of the Code of Hammurabi address the issue of polygamy. These laws state that a man who takes a second wife without the consent of his first wife must provide for the first wife and any children they have together, and that he must provide a financial settlement if he divorces the first wife. Additionally, the laws state that a man who marries a woman who is already married to another man will be put to death, as will the woman. Damn. Yeah. A man who marries a woman who is already married to another man will be put to death. Now, just a quick sidebar regarding polygyny. Keep in mind that's the act of one man being married to multiple wives. And again, this is where part of where this written contract comes from. All right. So you also got to keep in mind that and this is more of a presumption that patriarchy was in full effect at this particular point in time. Again, we're talking about 1750 BCE. So, um, yeah, they just probably frowned upon polyandry for the most part. We will do an episode on that. I don't know how far polyandry goes back and when it actually begins. Um, from what I've gathered in my studies and research, which is very little, so don't quote me on that. But from what I've gathered, it's looking like that's going into like central to northwest Africa is where polyandry might have begun. But again, I don't know that for sure. I gotta do a lot more research on that. Nevertheless, polygyny runs rampant at that particular point in time. And you can kind of see to some degree the different fragments of how Islam took a page out of the book of the Hammurabi Code of Laws. It is worth noting that while the Code of Hammurabi contains provisions related to polygamy, it does not explicitly endorse or prohibit the practice, which is true. Polygamy was common in ancient Babylon and other societies of the time, and the laws in the Code of Hammurabi reflect the social and cultural norms of the period. I think it should say cultural norms of that period. Again, polygamy, polyamory have been going on widespread, especially with the elite and in common towns also. All right. And we know some of the reasons why. We know why from an elite point of view, bloodline, keeping it in the family, keeping wealth in the family. But the same thing, as it pertains to the origins of marriage or the concepts of marriage was, the more we get our families together, the more provisions we have, the more we're able to take care of family members, and also it supported procreation. Nothing to frown upon at all. Nevertheless, you see these things beginning with the inception of civilization and various codes of laws as far as that concept is concerned, the written concept is concerned. Um, I'm going back to Chat GPT for a second. Hold on a second. So I'm gonna read this. So even this couldn't pull up this. One question was, what were the mating styles of humans called prior to the concept of marriage? A question that, again, no one can just fully answer. We just have fragments and pieces of a puzzle. It is difficult to pinpoint specific mating styles that were practiced by humans prior to the concept of marriage, as human societies and mating practices have varied widely throughout history and across cultures. In general, before the concept of marriage emerged, human mating practices were likely more informal and less regulated than they are today. In many societies, individuals were free to engage in sexual relationships and form partnerships with whomever they chose, with little or no social or legal restrictions. Again, like I said, just going back to when I was reading out of Osiris and the Egyptian resurrection regarding lower classes. It just wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a need for it to be written. It wasn't until you have codes and laws and written contracts where you find these different points of I didn't want to say it, but I'm gonna say it. These points of control. Okay, again, I ain't gonna dive deep into it. Don't bother me. Um, y'all, you all right? You good? You good? Okay. Relax, homie, relax. Like I said, be willing to do your own research. There ain't no need to debate. I don't do debates. I don't argue. I believe in plurality and duality, and multiple things can exist simultaneously at the same time. So there's a lot of information out there beyond what I'm reading. Nevertheless, a lot of what I'm reading is found to be pretty rampant in a lot of different applications and texts and books. So feel free to bring other things in addition to what I'm saying to the table because I love information. But I'm gonna read that again though. In general, before the concept of marriage emerged, human mating practices were likely more informal and less regulated than they are today. In many societies, individuals were free to engage in sexual relationships and form partnerships with whomever they choose with little or no social or legal restrictions. When I get to the Mississippian culture and various indigenous tribes in the Americas, you're going to also see that that existed the exact same way. There were no written contracts. Matter of fact, I don't think you find written contracts in the Americas till much later on. So there's that. However, it is important to note that even in societies where marriage did not exist, social norms and expectations around sexual behavior and relationships often existed. For example, many societies had rules around incest and taboos against sexual relationships between close relatives. And in many cases, sexual relationships were only permitted with certain social or age groups. This is true. Let's move on. How about this? How about this? This is not. I think we pretty much have covered where the written aspect of the documentation, as far as the origins of polygamy, is found. Again, just to kind of go back through that one more time, real quick, real quick. We're finding the origins of polygamy to have existed as far as contracts are concerned. Code of Hammurabi, 2100 1750 BCE, First Dynasty of Babylon, laws 144 through 147. We have the Book of the Heavenly Cow, that's 1550 to 1070. And we have the Maxims of Ani, 2860 to 1500 BCE. So that's where you're finding polygamy. And also, you're going to find it in the pyramid text too, but I'll get back to you on that. I don't know if I have that in my information stream for right now. And just real quick, let me see where we are. We're at 53 minutes, so cool. We'll keep on going. Um, you do have different cultures, different forms of alternative styles of companionship that are in alignment with polyamory. So I'm going to read that to you. Okay. You have the Muso culture, Mosu culture, Mosuo. This is a matriarchal society in China where there is no formal marriage ceremony. Instead, people engage in what is known as walking marriages. Pretty popular. This came up in documentaries. Yeah, say around 2013, maybe could have been earlier. Don't quote me on that, but walking marriages is something that, not that it was performed that in popularity, it just was becoming well known in different groups settings, where individuals are free to have multiple partners and children, and the children are raised by the mother and her family. You have the Na culture, Na culture, the Na people, Na people, who live in the mountains of China, have a matrilineal society where there is no concept of marriage. Instead, men and women are free to have multiple sexual partners and raise children on their own. The Aka culture, the Aka people, AKA, who live in Central Africa. I think this concerns the Twa too. The Twa people those individuals go back very far, very, very far. Twa, TWA. Practice a form of polyamory where both men and women have multiple sexual partners. They do not have a formal marriage ceremony, but they do have a strong sense of community and family. The Toda culture, the Toda people who live in southern India, practice a form of polyandry where one woman is married to multiple men. This is a rare practice, as most cultures that practice polygamy or polyandry involve one man with multiple wives. Yeah. The kibbutz culture, Kibbutz, kibbutz, is a communal living arrangement that is common in Israel. Members of the community live and work together, and while marriage is not forbidden, it is not seen as a priority. Children are raised by the community rather than by individual families. So that's just five. There's more than that, but that's just five right there. Um, See if I want to read anything else in particular. This I just got more stuff on marriage, and like I said, I don't want to make this about marriage. I don't want to make it about marriage. So just kind of going back to those communities, where do they get their own traditions from? Where do they get their concepts from? We don't know. I'll say that. I don't know. I'll say that. But what I will say is when you think about the practice of traditional monogamy today and the force behind it, like why do people that participate in monogamy, the frown, the judgments that come along with their lens and view of polyamory and polygamy is just it's disgusting. I don't believe that you do something like that. Are you crazy? And of course, we cannot leave out religion, the religious aspect of it all. I want to check the volume of something right quick. Yeah, we can't leave out the religious aspect. Religious indoctrination of many forms is has definitely stamped out um these common practices, these ancient practices, these indigenous practices, these practices that reside within a lot of us today from a genetic point of view. Genetically speaking, there's a lot of people that know that they are built a certain way. And I ain't talking about, infidelity. I ain't talking about side chicks and, whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that from a genetic point of view, I'm gonna generalize this statement also. From a genetic point of view, a lot of us are aware that there are things that reside in us that poke out every now and then, that want to surface every now and then, that we have to suppress and hold back due to societal pressures, due to societal norms, due to societal indoctrinations and conditioning, due to uh, religious conformity. We got to suppress it, right? It's a real thing. Look it up for yourself. So um, I'm being somewhat rhetorical to a degree, but what I'm saying, like, what is this? What is this about? I'm not gonna I'm not gonna just throw it in your lap, as far as the answer. But what I'm gonna say, think about it. Think about it. Why do you perceive this? Why does one perceive this as such a bad, evil thing when it's something that has been going on for so long? Now, look, listen. If you are a religious individual, a Christian, a Muslim, you might not like what I'm saying right now. You're probably not even listening anyways. If you're listening, I'm surprised. But because what I'm lecturing on from an abstract point of view has nothing to do with religion. You have not once heard me mention Latter-day Saints, Baptists, Islam. You know what I'm saying? Um, yeah, you haven't heard me say Adventist, anything, because when it came to these practices, it wasn't about religion. It, wasn't about religion. It wasn't about religion at that particular point in time. And if it was, it was about religion. 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 And if it was, it was those terms weren't coined yet. Christianity wasn't coined as a term in that particular point in time. Now, if you're talking about ancient Christianity, you know what? I'm not gonna get too deep into that. The point I'm trying, I don't want to get off topic because I can go really far left. The point I'm trying to make is that these things have been around for a long time, and um, there's nothing wrong with it today either. Let's go travel somewhere else. Hold on a second. I'm not gonna be too much longer. Now we'll say, again, I do find it interesting. I just kind of wanted to talk about the um the inception of the first dynasty being pretty much around 3100, 3100, 2600 BCE, and then you have pyramid texts. You know, the origins of marriage coming out of the pyramid text around 2800, basically. So you're talking about 200, 300 year span. Now, when you look back at that, it's like, man, 300 years. When you think about now, like, think about like 200, 300 years before there's even any documentation on the concept of what we call marriage or matrimony. Like they weren't even they just weren't talking about that yet. So I'm just curious. I'm curious as to why no discussion about marriage in any text regarding the first dynasties, and then you get to this intermediate period and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, so this thing, that's going on, yeah, this is what it's called, this is what it is, and this is how it's happening. And I mean, it's in short, it's not even detailed like that. I think, if I'm correct, when you talk about marriage regarding the pyramid text, what if I have that down somewhere. um they're not really even giving rules, if I'm correct. Let me see if I have it in my notes. Do 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 do. I don't believe I do. I don't believe I do. Yeah. But yeah, I just talk about the concepts of marriage, how they more than likely emerged in these civilizations and human societies and became formalized and codified in legal and religious practices in historical records like pyramid texts, or again, like I said, um, Code of Hammurabi. Let me read this part right here. Let me see. Okay, so I'll read this for you right here. The first documentation of marriage in ancient Egypt dates back to the Old Kingdom period around 2800 2350 BCE. The earliest known reference to marriage in ancient Egyptian text is found in the pyramid texts, a collection of funerary inscriptions that were carved into the walls of the pyramids of the pharaohs. Pharaohs, that's not the right word, actually. Um, In these inscriptions, the pharaoh is referred to as a husband of his mother, which suggests a formalization of marriage between siblings, a practice that was common among the royal family in ancient Egypt. Yeah, like I said, it's their viewpoints is interesting on this. So, anyways, we'll move forward on that. Um, and I would say also that some individuals watching or listening to what I'm saying right now might, bring up the perspective of African traditions and different tribal traditions. Like, so one thing you got to also take into consideration, like, there are so many tribes. There were, I'm not even talking about the kingdoms, because you have a couple handfuls of kingdoms throughout the timeline, as far as Africa is concerned. Kingdoms as far as the timeline, as far as the Americas are concerned. But when you're talking about tribes, like villages and communities, you're talking about thousands and thousands of different concepts and practices. Thousands. So the narrative that we get our customs of matrimony and how it's this you know revered institution in our African traditions. That is not true. It's not true. Unless you can gather up every African tribe's narrative and ritual practices regarding the ceremony of companionship as it pertains to matrimony, unless you can gather every single one of those tribes' information and show it to me, I'm going to call cap. You're wrong. You're wrong. It's not every African society and tribe practiced um, uh, marriage, practiced monogamy. Uh, Someone particular. I'm gonna tell you who particular. Uh, I just always remember. I could remember. Hold on one second. Let me see. I don't want to. I don't want to pull up Ben Yakinen. Ben. Anyways, let me just. Uh, I really want to pull up. Hold on one second. I'm trying to pull up somebody in particular. I didn't know I was going to end up using his information in particular. I've inserted him. Ben. Yeah, I don't even know. But what I will discuss is Dr. John Henrik Clark, who's an amazing scholar. Again, that's Dr. John Henrik Clark. If you don't know who he is, usually call them like the Trinity. You know him, Ivan Sertima, Yosef Ben Yakinen, um, three amazing Pan African historian scholars. And I wish I could remember the YouTube video. I will find it and I will include it in another episode. But he was one of the first I came across as I was dismantling different indoctrinated truths and decolonizing, mental health and other things. He was one of the first person like I came across regarding the fact that various tribes practice various forms of spirituality. There just was never like this one set um, standard of spirituality, even to the point of him expressing when they would come across each other, not all the time. I'm not going to sit up here and act like all tribes got along. We know that didn't happen all the time. But again, I'm just paraphrasing his words, not word for word. But he was basically expressing that they would find similarities in how they practice spirituality, and even though it wasn't the same, there was a respect, a reverence for one another. Oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes. Now, let me support that. What I'm paraphrasing regarding Dr. John Henrik Clark. When you look at divine principles of nature and how different African systems, not all, but some African systems, how they're practiced, whether it's the Loas or Orishas. Well, if you go back to, use those same divine principles of nature, you'll see Egypt, you'll see Kemet, you'll see Kush, you'll see Nubia, you'll see the same divine principles in the different what Europeans would call gods or deities, but they also were divine principles of nature. You see it in the Dogon. You see it in the ancient Americas. Also, different tribes. They had, different things that symbolize nature. It runs rampant throughout all ages of time, all the way from ancient times in antiquity, Kemet, Kush, Sumeria, Babylon, all the way to Mali, to Dogon, to Burkina Faso, to Ghana, to the Aztecs, to the Mayans, to the Mississippian culture. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. We've always practiced different forms of different things with similarities, different pieces of alignment that ran parallel. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think that's very important to express regarding polygamy monogamy, polyandry, polygyny, et cetera, et cetera. Just, every tribe, every culture did something different. Um, we're about to wrap it up. We're about to wrap it up. Let me see what else I want to talk about. I didn't read this thoroughly, so I don't think I'm gonna read this. But bear with me for a second. Nope. I was gonna read law and gender in the ancient Near East. I'll read this part. I'll read this part. Let's see what comes out of it. We're just gonna go off the dome, spontaneous like. Law and Gender in the Ancient Near East. This is coming out of the University of Chicago.edu. This volume treats several periods and cultures within and outside the ancient Near East. Through about half of the though about half of the contributions deal with cases outside the ancient Near East proper, this introduction mainly focuses on Mesopotamia. Let's keep going. The image that appears on the cover of this volume is no doubt familiar to the reader. Let me see if I can find this image. I might take a restroom break, by the way. Just hold on a second. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, Structures of Power. This is the source, chicago.edu. Structures of Power, Law and Gender Across the Ancient Near East and Beyond. I'm trying to see this figure they're talking about. I know my dogs are like, please hurry up. Um, oh, this is coming off of a stela, a glyph. Obviously, this glyph is out of Sumeria, according to the characters, entities on the tablet. This is definitely Sumeria, Mesopotamia. So now let me go back to what I was reading. So the image that appears on the cover of this volume is no doubt familiar to the reader. Lady Justice on one side and the famous stele bearing the law code of Hammurabi, like I said, Samaria, Mesopotamia, Babylon. On the other side, these two iconic figures represent much of what this volume is about. Lady Justice holds a sword in one hand and the scales in another. Although she is often depicted blindfolded, Justice, as we know, is rarely blind. On the Hammurabi stele, I think it's stele, right? We see the god Shamash, the Mesopotamian divine patron of justice, handing emblems of authority to earthly king. I don't know if this coincides with what we're talking about. I know it does because I know I pulled it up for a reason, but I just can't find it at the present moment. Nevertheless, give me a minute and a half. I'm going to take a restroom break. You can also, and we'll come right back. If I had some elevator music, I'd put it on for you, but I don't. So make up your own music. B-box, like Dougie Fresh. Hold on. How's that? How's that beatboxing? Oh, okay. Whew. So we continue. I think we'll give it about 15 more minutes, and there might be a part two. So, but as what I was reading, I think I'm gonna go ahead and go past that because, like I said, I didn't highlight what I wanted to read. Oh, you know what? Okay, I think I see something. Hold on. Oh, okay, I did highlight. Okay, okay. I did. Hmm. Marriage, divorce. Huh. I'm gonna read this right quick. Beginning in the early periods of the ancient Near East, Egyptian texts it's discussed ancient Egyptian texts that deal with the disposition of property in cases such as marriage, divorce, and death. These texts stipulate normative legal conduct more often than not pertaining to gender. When we compare these texts to other sources of daily life in Egypt, however, a different picture emerges. In fact, the division of property frequently deviated from the gender related directives of the disposition manuals. This suggests that individuals sometimes had an opportunity to negotiate between and among legal directives, social circumstances, and personal reference. Let me do something else right quick. Type in polygamy, polygamy. Mm, hmm. I'll read this. I don't know if this coincides well, but I'll read it though. The rules are a bit complicated on the face of them. Something denied male bigamists if they bore responsibility for such unions formed by children in power. Anyways, example, in many cases, however, opportunities for mobility rendered these rules mutes, and in others, the courts showed a remarkable willingness to accommodate second unions for reasons that must be left unexplored. The different the evident difference in experience may be reflected in popular usage, where references to bigamy and polygamy are not infrequent in the modern setting. While the Romans had no word for bigamy, certainly in the classical period, attitudes toward remarriage may also play a role in definition. The medieval concept of bigamy embraced not only simultaneous but serial unions as well, even if only the former were criminalized. Yeah. When I was reading through some of this, it was kind of seemed more so geared towards Romans having a very, very high standard set regarding relationships as it pertains to monogamy. Yeah. So, but yeah, we'll go ahead and skip past that. I'm not seeing anything that's useful to this conversation as it pertains to the origins of polygamy or polyamory. Um, let's read this right here. Actually, let me go up some. Let me go up just a little bit. Just a little bit. All right. Sit back and relax for this one. I'm going to read some stuff to you regarding polygyny in the New Kingdom of Egypt. Okay. And then I think yeah, I'm sure we'll be wrapping up after this. Now, this is coming out of academia.edu. Uh, threes a crowd the possibility of polygyny in New Kingdom Thebes. Polygyny is a type of polygamy, Actually, let me make sure everything's recording well right quick. Hold on a second. Yeah, we're good. We're good. Polygyny is a type of polygamy and is conventionally defined as the marriage of one man to multiple women simultaneously. LaToya Jones, FaceTime audio. Oh, let me turn that off. Um, However, this varies depending on what constitutes marriage in a particular society. Therefore, definitions of polygyny must be culturally and historically specific. We'll move on. Our understanding of ancient Egyptian marriage is incomplete. The limited evidence suggests that marriage in the pharaonic period was not state administered and probably involved a level of cohabitation and social acknowledgement. Formal marriage ceremonies are apparently not attested, and the majority of surviving legal marriage documents come from the Greco Roman period. There appears to have been multiple terms for a wife, including himet, sinet, and hipsit or hipsu, and for a husband such as he and sin or soon. For discussion of these terms, while this variation and the lack of documented formal practices make defining ancient Egyptian marriage challenging, they imply, excuse me, they imply that a range of marital relationships might have occurred in ancient Egypt, raising the possibility that this could have included polygyny. That's very interesting. But again, that lines up with what I was saying earlier regarding cross reference and the importance or lack of importance of marriage. In polygamy, a cross cultural analysis, Miriam Zeitzen notes five main functions: political, power, prestige, economic, and reproduction. The marriage of one man to multiple women can ally families together, forming strong political units. At the start of the Middle Kingdom, Manchu Hotep II arguably used this strategy to create a loyal circle of elite families. Strategic marital alliances are also evident in the late 17th to early 18th dynasty, Tomb 5, at El Kab, where two daughters of, I don't know this guy's name, named Kim and Set Imun, Set, Set Imun, or Imin, seem to have married the same man, a royal tutor called Eats. It is unclear whether these marriages were simultaneous or successive. A double marriage could have strengthened the union between these families, while it is also possible that one daughter married her brother in law following the death of her sister. Regardless, the marriage between two such elite families could no doubt have been advantageous to both sides. Polygyny is connected with power differentials, both between genders and within gender categories. As a result, polygyny is often associated with ge- ger- gerontocracy. Let's um let's make sure we know what that means. Well, let's make sure you might know what it means. I'm not the smartest cat. Gerontocracy. Gerontocracy is a state, society, or group of govern a group or group blah blah blah. Again, gerontocracy, a state, society, or group governed by old people. Government based on rule by old people. All right, we got it? Older generations holding most of the social power, especially regarding who is allowed to marry whom. Respect for and taking care of one's elders are well documented in ancient Egypt, so much so that an individual's inheritance usually depended on fulfilling these social expectations. For example, in the Ramseed will of Nanakte, the citizeness Nawet Nahut states that only the children who had provided for her in old age will receive a portion of her property. A practice that is supported by a law of Pharaoh quoted in the late 19th, early 20th dynasty. Let the possessions be given to him who buries. Moreover, attaining a revered old age is the ideal for a male elite, as exemplified in the classic Middle Kingdom poem Teachings of Ptahhotep. Put, just two more paragraphs. Stick with me. Stick with me. Two more paragraphs. Polygyny can often add prestige to individuals and family groups. According to the instruction of Ani, a man with many children is admired, suggesting that having multiple wives and so potentially more children might have increased one's social standing. The letters from the Middle Kingdom, Ket priest Heket Nehut, list at least 18 members of his household, suggesting the extent of ancient Egyptian families. Reproduction was arguably linked with prestige in ancient Egypt, and having children, especially sons who could assume their father's office, seems to have been a key cultural motive for marriage throughout the pharaonic period. The same sentiment appears in both the teaching of Hordedev and the instruction of Ani. The instruction of Ani. Take for yourself a loving wife, a male son is born to you. Also, obviously, you know that this is in the Old Testament too. Now, y'all ain't gonna have me get up here and say to y'all that a lot of the Old Testament come from other stuff. Did I just say that? There are factors such as divorce and health risks excuse me, health risks that make New Kingdom Egypt a less likely setting for polygyny. However, these limitations need not rule the practice out completely. For example, even though divorce was available to both men and women in ancient Egypt, the Demotic instruction of Ankh-Shishanki advises a man not to divorce his wife if she is infertile, which could suggest that polygyny was a more favorable solution. This practice is arguably evident in the Adoption Papyrus, which is eternally dated to the reign of Ramses VI and probably came from the Middle Egyptian town of Spermeru. Spermeru. In the first section of the document, a man, Nebnefer, adopts his wife, Nu Nefer, his heir since the couple were childless. The section ends with a statement of this, but the wife's name is given here as Ren Nefer. It is unclear whether this refers to the same person, but the change in the name does not seem to have affected the situation. In the second section, dated 17 years later, the wife mentions three children, which Neb Nefer appears to have had with a female servant named Duun. I don't know how to say that. Duin Hawet Iri. Ren Nefer adopts these children as her own heirs and facilitates the marriage of the eldest child to her young brother, making the latter her heir as well. Yeah, I think I think this will wrap this up pretty much. There's no need to dive into too deep into the lineage aspects of it all. So so analysis of modern societies suggests that mental health is often negatively affected by polygyny, especially for women. Let's read that. I'm not biased. Especially for the women and children involved. In their study of modern Arab Bedouin societies, shows that polygyny frequently led to jealousy between wives and to a lack of resources with which to provide for the family's many children. Such arrangements were only successful, albeit still emotionally challenging, when each wife and her children were treated equally. An increased number of sexual partners can also put individuals at a greater risk of sexually transmitted diseases and health complications, but such factors are unattested in the ancient Egyptian sources, particularly as the few tombs which show multiple wives lack any associated human remains with which to investigate these possibilities. Overall, therefore, the evidence of parallels suggests that New Kingdom Egypt was a social setting that could have accommodated polygyny in both its royal and non royal spheres, despite the option of divorce and the potential health risk involved. The strong social emphasis on having children combined with the political potentials for large family units suggests that a man with sufficient resources might have had reasons to practice polygyny. And we will stop there. Whew, an hour and 30 minutes in. What's the takeaway, right? That's the overall overarching question, possibly, for this particular episode regarding the origins of polygamy, polyamory, and marriage. Again, we didn't get too deep into marriage. We did touch on it quite a bit. Like I said, this is hard not to touch on marriage and its origins and you know polygamy at the same time. I think there's a few different takeaways. Number one, as I always like to say, controlling the narrative. Controlling the narrative of how you perceive what it is that you're doing and how you want to participate in companionship is humongous. It's enormous. If you want to practice polygamy or polyamory, you should not fear that. Obviously, it's illegal here, so I'm not gonna go on on video as saying that you should do that because it's illegal. What I will say though, what I will say is, you can see why the questions come up, why the questions arise regarding like why is it that way? Regarding polygyny and regarding the political aspect of the structure, the policies, the politics, the wealth, um, the bloodline aspect, the royalty that came along with it, the ability to be able to share among numerous people, family members, and stuff like that. It's like I think a question from a polyamorous might be like, well, why did you have to create laws in order to do that? Like, can I not be a polyamorous? Can I not be with multiple people and have a substantial income and do the same exact thing? Like, why was it necessary for written contracts to be put in place in order to? Um, a lot of polyamorous don't agree to that for reasonable reasons, realistic reasons, for decent reasons, and no one's wrong or right as far as how to observe these structures, these systems. But it's obviously true that systems were etched in stone, and with these systems came laws and codes. Not in full, not in totality, but part of the reason why the system of matrimony and marriage exists today is because it supports the system that it's involved in. Marriage is involved in a system that was created many, 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 many thousands of years ago. So it's it, there's there's reason to believe. No wonder why it's traditional. No wonder why it's attached and connected to so many religions and stuff like that, and or tribes and different cultures in particular, because a system was perfectly created for it. It's not a perfect system within a system that's not perfect. Also, you know, these systems were created in ancient times. One should also ask is why new systems are not being put in place to support new things, right? These systems supported something that was created a long time ago. The institution and the inception of marriage and how it was created ran parallel with various codes and laws in that particular point in time. But we're in 2023. So why do we do the same things? Okay? Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Hey, Rose Quinn, how are you? Oh, nah, no problem. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. So, so yeah, you can overstand, you can understand why um, individuals who are polyamorous in nature and the different subsets of polyamory, why they don't subscribe to the institution of marriage and matrimony in particular, because for from one angle, a lot of these individuals think outside the box. All right, something that I've said often over the past few years is that I don't believe necessarily that um, our ancient ancestors, all these ancestors that predate us, that they necessarily wanted us to mimic what they did. I think they wanted us, to be our own gods. Like they were considered gods in their own right, in themselves. There's this particular part in the movie Inception at the end where, if you've watched Inception, where the son is basically, he's been induced, because they've gone through, however many levels, 3 levels I think, deep into a dream, to induce this guy to break up, his father's company, blah 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 blah, paraphrasing a little bit. But one of the things that comes out of that moment, that scene, that frame, is, I didn't want you to do it the way I did it. I want you to be your own person. I want you to be yourself. And I like that part in that scene, because that's how I think about my journey and how I choose to live my life in particular. And I think about my ancestors and like my genes and the atoms and the codes that run through me. I feel like they were like, yeah, this is a template, but you don't have to do it like us. We don't want you to do our same rituals and incantations and spells. Matter of fact, we don't necessarily need you to observe our symbols and our language. Use them. Use them if you want to. It's beautiful. Medu Neter, cuneiform, Meroitic script, all these different beautiful divine languages that existed at those times. The way they were written and observed, like it was a beautiful spiritual language, right? I know they're like, use them, and also go further than us, go beyond us, go beyond us, think differently. I think there's a reason why it's said that we only, whether right or wrong or true or false, that we use 10% of our minds, because we're so busy distracted and we're so many layers deep within so many systems that we're not even getting, not even touching the surface of who they are, because we're so busy trying to implement and mimic. And I think we're supposed to do things differently. So, circling back around to what I was just saying regarding the takeaway, one of the, not the only takeaway. This is, my takeaway, one of my takeaways, but one of the takeaways to me regarding, um, these institutions, is that I don't think that we necessarily need to be doing it the same way today. We did that. We've been there, done that. All right. Today's a new day. So that's one of my takeaways. Um, Now there's some other takeaways to go along with that, like I just read in the last paragraph, and as it was expressed from the individual that wrote that part regarding polygamy being unhealthy. I can see that too. What's his name? I forgot his name. Very popular African Rose Queen. You know what I'm talking about. I forgot his name. I just forgot his name all of a sudden. Popular African singer. He's a male. I forgot his name. I'm about to look it up. I'm gonna look it up. Y'all taking too long. Y'all taking too long. I'm just playing. Uh African singers. I'm gonna be mad since I see his name. Damn, surprised his name didn't even pull up. Are you serious? Was it Selah? Fela Kuti. I forgot his name. Fela Kuti, sorry. No, I'm talking about Fela. Fela, he was polygamous. I think he had like, let me look that up. Let me see how many wives he had. Fela Kuti had how many wives? How many? 28. 28 wives. Woo. My man, he definitely read Solomon. He was like, Solomon had 90 something. No, no, wait. According to the Bible, Solomon had like 900 and something wives. Anyways, 28 wives. Again, I'm not here to judge him or anything like that. He had the the money and the politics and whatever else to do that. Nevertheless, it's very well known for those that follow or know his story or whatever, that he divorced, if not all of them, most of them, and he made it very clear that this is hard, this is difficult. Um, So you got to look at it from that perspective too, because there's this thing called humanity, and we're human, and we have feelings, and there's a lot of information out there regarding how to observe, and different therapies as it pertains to jealousy, regarding polygamy and polyamory and monogamy also. So I think there's techniques, maybe to better deal with those things, but I don't know. I think that when it comes to that perspective, I think that to some degree, for individuals, especially if you are a true monogamous, then jealousy is something that doesn't need to be replaced or necessarily looked at. I mean, unless it's just extreme. I mean, jealousy should be put in a certain container no matter who you are. But from a polyamory or polygamy point of view, like, if that's really who you are as a male or a female, I think that, you do have to look at it from a certain lens of conditioning and indoctrination. Because keep in mind, you know, from an indoctrination and conditioning point of view, you've been, basically repetitiously, you know, told that you got to look at life a certain way, look at relationships a certain way. This is how it's supposed to be done. And, I'm just being honest when it comes to all types of relationships, companionships, but in particular monogamy, there's a lot of aspects of control there. And, you know, I think that that's a different discussion for another day. But when it comes to control and suppression and um, for people to not be able to be free to be who they need to be. And I'm not necessarily talking about to be polyamorous or polygamous or whatever, but just to be free. Sometimes these constructs, whether it be monogamy or polyamory or polygamy, can really get in the way. So, so that's another takeaway, is that these aspects of humanity did show up. Now, how it showed up in ancient times regarding the elite, I don't know, because elite people, they was just on a whole nother level. And like I said, trying to look at things through the lens of the aristocratic Kemet, Kush, Nubian dynasty kings, and um, they call them pharaohs, but not pharaohs, but the wise, the rulers, the rulers of that time. Same thing with Mesopotamia and Samaria. And they just had a different way of thinking, man. And like I said, for us to try to think like they thought, I think it's rough. It's a little difficult. But let me read what you said, Rose Quinn. Jealousy. I have really had to learn about being happy. Someone I care about is feeling. Oh, yeah. And now I want them to be happy. Good things in my life. Yeah. Learning. Yeah. I feel you. I feel you, Rose Quinn. Yeah. It's a process, man. It's a process. And, you know, when when you've come into this, they say that for the first 7 years, that's the heaviest part of the indoctrination, and then after that, it's just on and on and on. You see your environment, it's your family, it's your friends, it's religion, it's school, and like it's so many things, and all of a sudden you come into this quote unquote enlightenment, and this stripping happens, and now all of a sudden you got to figure out, like, dang, I've been this all this time. I gotta dial it down and, and eliminate these things that shouldn't have never been there. Imagine coming out of the womb, in a certain type of family, with a certain type of lifestyle where polygamy or polyamory is practiced, and you see beautiful things. You see positive, optimistic ways of participating in companionships, and you don't know any different. So you'd have a whole different lens, and jealousy would look totally different to you. You know what I mean? But that just isn't the case for a lot of us, and for those of us, especially in the Western Hemisphere, from a modern point of view. Because like I said, ancient from an ancient Western Hemisphere point of view, our ancestors, they were practicing these things too. You know what I'm saying? Whether it was polygamy or polyandry or polyamory, they were practicing these things too. And again, a lot of these systems came in and just stripped it. And that's what decolonizing is all about. That's what stripping indoctrination, stripping capitalism, all that stuff. You saw this giant spider. She was so calm. I was like, if he shows in my life, he will. I'm trying to be chill. Thank you so much, Rose Quinn. I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah. Anansi. I remember because this was titled the University of Anansi. I decided to title it the University of Ghosts, but don't get it twisted. I am still the quintessential Anansi. I still subscribe to Anansi because that's part of who I am. The ability to master and weave reality. I'm a communicator, and so Anansi is always going to be in my bloodline, right? Um, but yeah, I plan on Rose Quinn. I plan on doing this. I'm going for once a week, at least twice a month. But Rose Quinn, I don't know if you follow me on IG, but follow me on IG. Um, I think you did at one point, but my IG got hijacked, and it was just terrible. And I didn't really care at the point because I was like, you know what, I wasn't really doing much with it anyways. So, but I have started IG again, and I have two accounts. So I have El Rico Ramon Worlds, um, and I have Multi-Monogamous, which you can get to from either or. You can get to either account from either or. So please go follow me, and I look forward to communicating with you like I used to through that platform also. All right, but yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for this Anansi and Ghost of Spirits. Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Rose Quinn. That's gonna wrap it up for this episode. Again, this episode, the audio form of this episode will premiere on the podcast platform Multi-Monogamous. The video will stay right here on YouTube. And I think the next one we do will be either I'm going to do the origins of marriage and really do a little bit more of a deep dive into that, or I might do polyamory and polygamy, the origins of that in the Americas, ancient America. So we'll get to it. All right. Peace. Love you guys. Peace and light. And I will talk to you soon. Rose Quinn, take care. I will talk to you, I'm sure, really soon. All right. Peace, y'all. Take care.